Tyler, thank you so much for joining us today. As you know, the AI and CX podcast is about leaders like yourself sharing with the broader community on lessons learned in the trenches, running CX organizations, running technology organizations, and being in the middle of this Gen AI transformation wave which we are seeing in CX, right? So thanks again for your time. We are very thankful for your partnership, and we always come to you with all kinds of feedback and learnings personally. So we thought having you on this podcast is a great opportunity for you to share your wisdom broadly, which we are selfishly using for the years, the community. So with that, would be great if you could introduce yourself and give us a current sense of your role at QuinStreet. And then prior to that, leading up to this point in your career, what were the experiences and your journey into this current role?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So my title is Vice President Contact Center Operations at QuinStreet. I've been at QuinStreet about 12 years now. I run the insurance division from a contact center perspective, where as well as own a lot of the products that are related to the contact center space that help us to facilitate that across multiple contact centers that QuinStreet has. So that includes SMS, that includes quality platform, some marketing compliance related things of that nature. So that's my span of control. A lot of offshore, onshore, nearshore vendor management, working closely with legal and compliance and things of that nature, overseeing QuinStreet's technology and operations perspective for contact center space. Prior to QuinStreet coming on here, I started my career as a call center agent for a company called Nationwide Insurance. So I was the licensed insurance agent selling auto and home insurance in the contact center. And that translated into multiple roles, eventually got me into places where I enjoyed sales, but at the same time, I'm very close to my heart is a lot of the technology component. So got into forecasting and scheduling, quality control, quality monitoring, things of that nature. I ran our workforce management team at Nationwide for the property and casualty space, for the sales and servicing division, and then transferred into a sales leadership role within Nationwide as well, where I ran our sales division in one of our contact centers for the property and casualty space. And with a lot of my background and experience from that in the contact center leadership role, where I really got to see firsthand more closely that CX, where it came to selling and retaining policies within the insurance category. I left there and moved to a company in Portland called The Standard. So The Standard Insurance, they have disability insurance, multiple contact centers. I helped them build up their workforce management programs, their quality programs, IVR, as well as voice of customer tools that we implemented using some upper right quadrant vendors to do that. So in that space, it was, an amazing experience with a customer experience side of things with consumers who are in the disability programs, whether short-term, long-term, things like that. And at that point, so Nationwide, I was there about 13 years. At Standard, I was there about 3 years. And then, transitioned into QuinStreet and to do something slightly different, getting into sales, more of the marketing component, call marketing, and to kind of round out my career from a inbound versus outbound perspective. And so I brought all of that experience to bear within the QuinStreet space, because there's a lot of opportunity for a leader within QuinStreet to do that. So it's been a great journey, long journey. I love the call center space. I'm just so thankful. I never thought I'd be at this point in my life being in call center still, to be honest with you. But it's amazing the amount of opportunity that exists within the contact center space when you really put your mind to it.
I totally agree with you, Tyler. So what a wonderful journey and sort of climb up the ladder in terms of and increasing sphere of impact. One question which I often almost ask always in the podcast, and I'll start off with that even in your case, given you have been on the front lines as an agent. I'm sitting here in Silicon Valley with Gen AI. A question which I get 100% of time is, I'd love to hear your point of view. will human agents be around in 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah.
And I, of course, have my answer to it, but I'm very curious about your answer to it. But another way, what would be the role of a human agent in the contact center if you had a crystal ball five
Yeah.
years from now?
Yeah, I mean that's the $1 million or maybe $1 billion question, really, right? I mean, I personally believe that we will see a pretty strong transition into AI there's some components that replace agents. There's no doubt that first line or front line type work can be handled with an AI tool. The more intelligent those things become, and ability to what I like to see in the space that I've been seeing really a lot lately are some amazing tools that have their agentic AI where they're connecting to so many products inside the enterprise that you're bringing in the ability to quickly get to an answer for someone without making an error. So, will an agent be needed? I could say maybe. If I knew that, I'd probably be on CNBC or whatever, but I don't, I think probably yes to a degree, but I feel like as the journey progresses with AI, more and more of it will be replaced on that frontline piece on what the amount. So on a sales side of things, the basic intake on a servicing side or customer experience perspective, basic requests, kind of like an IVR can do today, but you're speaking with someone in a natural language and it's answering those questions for you, reducing the amount of calls, reducing the friction at the customer level where those consumers don't have to call back, they don't have to go back online and talk to a chat rep or whatever. So I would say I'm bullish that they probably will be still.
Yeah, exactly.
For my career, I feel like they need to be.
Oh, I look, I think so. Let's double click on that for a second, Tyler, because I totally, and the devil is in the details here, because especially in the insurance business, the kind of business you run, right? I often tell folks that a customer service representative or a customer service consultant or an insurance representative or whatever, they are not, they are doing multiple jobs. They are answering questions. They're being salespeople. They're being consultants. They're being troubleshooters, and they are sometimes empathizing,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And hopefully, exactly. That's why we have auto QA. But like empathizing, right? And now, can an AI do one of these jobs? Like answering basic questions? Yes. Can it do sales, consultant, empathize, troubleshoot? Answer questions? No. Right?
Yeah.
And so let's take insurance, for example. I'm curious and also because insurance is a complex sales, right? For somebody to go in and say, like, am I covered in this policy? Am I eligible for this program? Those kinds of conversations are much harder to replace. My senses is where you're pointing to, as opposed to frontline question answering, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like kind of where you're going with that, with the right tools and the right investment, training, onboarding, uptake at the contact center level, because that's such an important component. Buying a product is not hard, right?
Right.
Putting in place, so many smart people do those things for businesses.
Right.
It's really about integrating that response into your FAQs, knowledge management system, so that when you do answer that question, am I covered under this? What are my policy limits? Do I have this program? Whatever. On an insurance perspective, I think it's a paradigm shift, because if you have the right tools sitting in the background for your agents to answer that question, so they're trained on how to answer, are you qualified for this program? They say, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Okay, here's your result. Why wouldn't an AI be able to do that? Right. So, but that's a paradigm shift, because that, to your point, you're having that conversation. Customer calls in, hey, I want to see if you got my payment. It looks like you did. Oh, I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Now it goes into this whole other conversation, whereas maybe you have an AI agent that's doing something very basic. Now, do you transfer them to an agent in the future? Can you program that to translate it? Can it learn something?
Yeah.
That's where I feel like the future is from that perspective.
That's a great point, Ella. But sorry to get you there, but that example you gave is wonderful. In that example, if let's say there's a backend system which is giving you the yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and let's say the answer is no, you're not eligible. But a good human agent would be like, you know what? You're not eligible for this program, and I've been hearing about this thing or this other program which is launching. This is where you are a consultant. That is what separates the good salespeople from the average salespeople, the good advisor from the average advisor.
Right.
Well, that's where you have incentives and so on and so forth. Now, can you imagine an ever-knowing AI which is smart on QuinStreet's systems and policies and upsell schemes and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a big science geek, and yes. Is it 5 years away? I don't know about that.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. The timing of it, I mean, I'm sure you know this better than me, but the speed in which these models learn now is so much faster than what it has been in the past. I heard it even this morning. I was hearing this individual speak, and they said it's not really a curve any longer. It's a vertical line almost, where the models are learning in such capacity. So can I see a point where you have an empathetic, reasoning language model that can answer all of your questions and understand? I don't know that. I guess I'm not smart enough to know those things, but I could see how there's a lot of use case for that.
Yeah.
In the contact center space.
Absolutely right. And I think there are like quickly there as in the spirit of a conversation, there are three parts there. One is the LLM itself being smart to answer a question on the spot. Right? Like if I ask you something, hey, do you understand that? The second is the LLM planning 2 or 3, 4, 5 steps. Which is, hey, the answer to this was no. But you know what? I've heard this before, that these kinds of things are good, and it'll really figure out something for you.
Right. Yeah.
But the third, I think those two things are pretty advanced. But the third, which we often see is a huge blocker in organizations, is that most organizations don't have the internal tooling to feed the AI that answer, like when you say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, right? Like right now, it's a bunch of manual steps, disjointed systems which don't talk to each other. And the human agent actually cobbles it all together in a way, right? Like they think something thing, they evaluate it, they give an output. There's no single intelligence mechanism in every organization which is consistent, which an AI can loop into.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree with you. Disparate systems, your training department, bringing all that together, trying to get training manual together for your agents, putting it into a knowledge management tool where you can search on what are ways that my client can qualify for this thing, so on and so forth. So I'm bullish that can happen. Is it organized to do today? I don't know that answer, but I feel like there's a great opportunity in the near future to see what that might look like. I'm really excited to be in the contact center space at this time because there's so much ahead of us.
Wonderful.
That we're learning on that it really could be a change in what we all know about from this, from a contact center space perspective.
Totally. That makes sense. So shifting gears, and how did you start your AI adoption journey? You talk about the strategic role of tech in the contact center, right? And tech in the last few years in contact center has been cloud telephony. AI is a big part of it, other digital strategies. So how do you think about the strategic role of tech? And then I know there's a topic you've been writing about recently as well. So would love for our audience to hear about that.
I think the journey's been coming up for a while. And what I mean by that is you've seen bits and pieces of it along the way, where it's like natural language IVRs, right? You call in to your airline and you say, how can I help you today? And you think you're speaking with someone, but that's just dipping into a database, answering based on what you know, but it's recognizing that information. Fast forward to everybody saying they are an AI tool now, right? That's in the space. What do you do? I do AI, or I do this, or an LLM, right? Whatever. And looking at those tools, and some of those tools are very advanced. Some of those tools are very immature, but have a lot of potential. So like agent AI, where you say, well, let's have an agent talk to you as a consumer. there are some tools out there that you can get by with that. And then there's also tools that you absolutely know as a human that is not a human being on the other end of that line, right? So, once we pass that point where you can't really tell on the phone where it's interactive, then I think that's where we'll see a lot of change. What's got me down that road is I was looking in my own business and looking at, sales enablement, looking at compliance. Where does that all exist? It all exists down at the agent level. It doesn't exist in the executive level or the management team level. We have ideas and strategies about how we want to approach that. But at the end of the day, your agent, representative, salesperson is the individual who's connecting with the consumer or the buyer or the customer on the other end of that phone. So how do we make sure that that agent is, one, the highest trained potential, has everything they need in front of them, and then we can speed up the ability for that agent to come up to a level where we consider them adequate or better for being on the phone. When you look at our traditional quality platforms, we listen, most companies will score 8 to 15 calls a month, give agent feedback, check a box, 20 questions, 5 questions, 100 questions. I've seen a lot. And then statistically say that's your QA score and how you interact with customers. We all know that that's not true. I mean, at the end of the day, that's not true. My point was, what are the tools that are available to me today that would allow us to expand that, grow our sales capability by having better engagement with our consumers on the sales themselves, the cross-sell or upsells or whatnot. And then for my leadership to be able to see that easily and react and coach to that, and the agent to be able to self-coach and self-correct in a tool or tools that are available to them. So that's really where I was focused on, was like, I think the quality component of that is really, really key. We put some things in place in the last couple of years and have seen that improve dramatically, scoring 100% of our call, dashboarding that, and being able to engage a rep in a positive or corrective way within an hour of that phone call if there's a good or poor thing, or change something around the product or process that we can if we want. It's rare that you do that latter part, but in terms of a rep perspective, this is what was said or how it was done, or someone doing something that you don't want them to do, you can correct that really quickly. And the speed in which reps come up to training is much, much greater and much quicker, which is actually speed to market and improves your customer experience, improves your sales, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's really where as the tools came available and they were realistically available to contact centers where they were going to actually help versus just be there and say we have something. That's where I feel like that was the next step for moving. Yeah.
We have observed your organization and yourselves leadership and execution and detail orientation in that area, and it's been an incredible execution, which brings me to the next part of our question, which is, let's say you embarked on this technical strategy, and again, this is an area to talk about how do you ensure usage and ROI, and because that's where rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
We see it in a lot of organizations that they're not set up for success.
Yeah.
Or even if they are, and this is an area for us to improve. How can we partner with them to set them up for success? Right.
Yeah.
But what do you see as best practices there? What do you guys do on measuring usage and ROI and discipline around execution?
You're right. It's where the rubber hits the road. And it's easy I wouldn't say easy. The easy part is selecting a tool and putting it in place. The more difficult is the adoption and the transition from new to how is this part of our day-to-day? And that takes time. That takes an effort in which each of the business units have to focus really, really hard on making sure that they understand the use cases in which they're trying to solve for, They understand the communication component, because that's a big thing. You know, all of a sudden you have let's say a new product where it affects your agents. How do you communicate that? You know, that's why our focus was always about compliance and sales enablement. So to improve our sales process for our agents, not, oh, I want to find out all the bad things you're doing on a phone call. Okay, that's a low-hanging fruit, right? The harder part is how do you bring that to speed, bring that to market, and then integrate that into your organization? It's not simple. I think it's about communication. It's about partnering very well with your vendor, partnering very well with people in the space, understanding what others are doing in the space, making sure that the tool that you have available is working, that the way you expect it to work, and then just continuing that cycle of making change, implementing, measuring, change, implement, measure. That's the best way for us to approach that. So, you know, within our own business, we have different levels of adoption. We have different levels of engagement, but across the board, absolutely agree that those tools are effective in helping to support, manage, coach, improve performance. The big issue, not big issue, the thing you have to be very, very aware of is when you bring those tools in, the ROI on that goes away quickly. And what I mean by that, I don't mean that you lose the ROI. I mean, there's a point in time where the system's in place. So it's pre that is your like, what did we do before that? And then how long did it take for us to get to our return on that? And then what are the changes that we're managing going forward? So once you have that in place in that first 6 months, 8, 12 months, you have to go back into the time machine and really understand what was going on before. How are we reacting to calls? If you're listening to 8 calls and scoring 8 calls, and today you're listening and you're auto scoring 100% of your calls. If you're not finding ways to improve or support your staff, then you aren't looking at the right things, in my opinion. So,
Wonderful.
but that's hard because you have to have focus and dedication to make it happen. And you have to buy in, I think, from the executive level down, and then from the agent level up. So all of that's going to meet it. Agents are hearing calls. They're looking at their scores. Do they trust that the auto score was right? When they look at the transcription, is it right?
Yeah.
And then when you aggregate that up to an executive level, what are they actually looking at? What's the value that we're getting out of this tool?
Yeah.
And so inside of that is all of that work that needs to happen at an operations level to provide the best experience for your consumers or your customers. Or
That's a really good one, Tyler. And let me branch off there on this auto scoring part. 100% of conversations being reviewed. One of the conversations which we have with our customers a lot is, as you said earlier on, most organizations have some set of rubrics with 10, 20, 30 questions, and they're measuring something.
Yeah.
When they meet us or when they get on their CX transformation journey, you know. Now, is it a good goal? How should they be thinking about automation? Should they automate all of their old rubrics? Or should it be like, you know what really moves the needle for my business goal, key business goal, KPI?
Right.
Whatever it could be. For you, it's the sales conversion. For everybody, it is CSAT and, you know, something.
Yeah.
For somebody else, it could be policy closures. How should they be thinking about automation, right?
Yeah.
Surgically, or like, you know, automate the old word for me. Like, I have this thing, put it in the AI and make an AI version of this, you know?
Right. No, that's a great question, and things that we actually talk about a lot, and I think about a lot. And it would be a great world if we could automate the entirety of every possible scenario that you want to QA, and that would be ideal.
Yeah.
Does it exist today? I don't know that it really does. I think the opportunity for businesses to use these tools to say, okay, what are the key things that our reps do that are very important that they do, but do we need a human checking a box when they said their first name, or when they said the intro correctly, or they said they offered a cross sell, right? You can hear that, you can score that. Is it important that you check that 10 times a month, or on every interaction that rep has with the customer. Those are the things I feel like are the automated piece. When you bring in a tool like this, it's very important, in my opinion, to educate the business teams that these tools aren't designed to eliminate staff. That there's a general sense that that's what they do. You could say, oh, I have a 10-person QA team. I'm going to start automating all of this. And guess what? I'm going to be able to save 10 FTE. I'm going to put that elsewhere. I'm going to do that. Maybe. I think that's basic thinking. And from that perspective, I think you can optimize. I think you could probably find some opportunity there. But within that, you're always going to have a component where you have, let's say, a new sales offer going out, or maybe you have a new program that customers are calling in and you want to make sure that your reps are handling that correctly, but it only runs for 2 weeks. And you don't want to rework, let's say, to create that into an automated QA form for that 2-week period. So you have individuals and team members that are QAing that in manual form, or more complex situations that are coming in, like billing issues or things of that nature, that you want to actually get a human to listen to, a QA person to listen to. They're very valuable because they provide great insight, and they can help you build up your program for the automation, right? So I don't think you should put all of your rubrics in my opinion, but I think you should work towards those opportunities. Yeah. And I feel like it's an opportunity to have a shift in how you think about your rubrics on what's really the most important to you as a business. You might have, like you said, let's say you have 50 questions on a rubric. Really? Like, that's a lot of questions to give feedback on to an agent who's just trying to help their customer, right? That's what they're trying to do. Yeah, it's important. Did you check this box? Yes. No, whatever. But what is really the most important thing? Yeah. What are the most important things that you want to make sure always happen on every call when a customer comes in? Because that will help the rep be more engaged, that they're doing a better job. Your leadership will be happier. They'll be focused on things, not just like nitpicking away at certain things. Your business will become more successful in a general, because you're going to be improving processes that are the most important to you. So, yeah. So that's my personal opinion on that. But I'm sure there's a lot of use cases out there where people would say, "Oh, I want to put all my rubrics in and have it manual auto score everything."
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I have a bad golf swing. And I see so many videos, and every video has a different advice how to improve your golf swing. And I'm looking for the 3 things consistently, which I can actually use to improve my golf swing, as an example. And where I'm going with this is, if you tell a service rep who is so burdened with so many different things, with such a high pressure job, 50 things or 30 things for evaluation on a weekly basis, and score them and give them performance, it's good. But wouldn't it be better if we, as businesses, found out 6, 7, 10 things which move the needle for you as a sales leader, as a service leader, as a CFO, as a CEO, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And guess what? The service rep's job impacts all those people.
Absolutely.
It impacts all those people. Those 6, 7 things, if we measure those in 100% of conversations, analyze the heck out of it, benchmark, correlate, do every bit of data analysis there, and act on it, right? We generally think that is much more effective. And because we see it across hundreds of organizations, right? And when customers come to us, it's like, hey, this is my book, automate it. We argue because we share our best practice, right? Yeah. Sometimes at their books, there's a question and there's like five pages after it of like, what do we want them to do?
Yeah, right. No, I completely agree with that. And I feel like, if you could, like, let's say you think it all the way at the CFO level, you're talking about expense perspective. How am I optimizing my businesses? If you took the top 3 things that generate additional phone calls to your contact center and you have 10,000 reps, that ends up being a lot of calls and time. If you automate something over the course of time, figure out what's truly driving that, fix that. And not only is that contact center leader going to be given a lot of support and accolades in that you're going to see a reduction in your calls, your handle time, which turns out to reduce your expense line, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, no rep wants to field a call where the person's called in 3 other times, their peer on the other 3 calls didn't handle the call correctly because they didn't get the right coaching or they thought they were doing the right thing. Thought the training said, maybe it was, maybe the training manual was not updated. And so they aren't doing the right thing today, but they were doing it the way it was a month ago. That gets caught very quickly in an automated, when you automate the most important things and then you listen to 100%. More importantly than that, taking all that information and then dashboarding that so you can see what you're looking at specifically on screen so you can quickly analyze the details. So
Absolutely. Shifting gears again, my last couple of questions here. You talk about this a lot, and you were just teeing off that point, driving adoption through leadership, because that's you mentioned the CFO angle, you mentioned like the CRO and the sales organizations. Any best practices for our group here? Because this is another one where when we talk to CX leaders or sales leaders or revenue leaders, they're like, man, I got to get budget for this.
yeah.
I got to create a business case, defend that business case. And as soon as I implement the tools, 15 days in, I'm kidding, but you know what? There's a pressure to prove ROI.
Yeah.
So how do you communicate that, and how do you build that case within the leadership?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that comes down to, I feel like communication is so important. You know, obviously, if you're going through the effort of building a use case, getting budget for that, part of the leader and who's bringing that in is to see it through to that adoption phase and championing that, whether it's with key people on those teams that can implement it in their own business units, and then communicating the outcomes of that ROI back up to those executive teams is really, really important. I mean, I see that in not only our business, but in others that I've talked to, is there's a lot of wins and losses in that space. So it's like I said, it's easy to select and put something in place. Once you get budget, you can go select something, put it in place. That's probably, 20% of the effort.
Right.
And then when you get it on board, it's not set and forget. It's not plug and play. There's so much energy that has to go into it. But if you do it right, and you get the right support, with the business unit to how do we want to focus on this, the right support from a resource perspective, coming back from like part of your budgeting for this tool, you're going to see success if you stay with it to really build it into the DNA of what you're doing as a business team, right? So you just have to think about it, the value that it's bringing to your business. If it's just saying, hey, we do 100% of our calls, we score 100%. Okay, that's great. I mean, eventually everybody's going to do that. Eventually these tools aren't going to be a nice to have. They're going to be critical and everybody's going to have them. And then if you're not doing it now, you're going to probably do it the next 1 to 5 years. And then you may or may not, you'll be following behind. You're going to be in stress to figure that out. It's the communication piece that I feel like is the biggest part, and hearing the front line, hearing the staff that's using it day to day, what are the challenges they're having, and then partnering really well with the right teams, vendors externally, if you've purchased or whatnot, to make sure that the tool works for you and make sure that process, when you select that tool, does fit your business, right? Yeah. Doing the right RFPs is so important to ask the right questions. Don't use the vendor's RFP form. That's a nice starting point, right? Everybody's got one. Everybody will give you one that'll fit their product. But what's most important is, how does it fit your business unit or units, right? And then when you bring that all in, communication from top to bottom to top is so important. And
do you see that there is, over the last couple of years, and you talk about this topic of how to select vendors and so on, the last couple of years, as when you were going through your due diligence, there were new age vendors and legacy vendors in your, or do you see that or don't? Like, and you don't have to say to make me feel good, but in general,
Yeah.
You think about the CX buyer persona, because
Yeah.
these problems, I try to explain it to folks in our ecosystem who are not from the CX space. It's like the problems which level AI solves have been around for 20 years,
Yeah.
30 years, as long as customer service has been around.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
solutions available now were not available to these problems.
Right.
Companies trying to solve this have also been around for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
How do you think about, because there are a bunch of vendors in the space too, right? What is your quadrant look like? Not putting vendors in there, but in terms of like, what are the different categories of vendors you see almost, if that makes sense,
Yeah. I mean, I think when my model, the way I go about this is I look at it in an extremely objective take.
Yeah.
I try not to bring any subjectivity to my selection process around vendors. So I have a very vetted product for an RFP that gets specific, very, very specific for my business team. And then I take that and I use that with getting a really wide net on who's in the space. You have to look at the folks that have been around for a long time, because if you don't, then you're going to have people that'll say, how come you didn't look at those people? Right? How come you didn't look at that vendor? That's fine. Put them in. They've been around a long time. They should have a lot of things solved and better. What I like to look at is comparing those against the vendors who are up and coming, the vendors that are disruptive in the space, the folks that are coming in and saying, we're going to do everything we can to support your business model, and then let the RFP sort a lot of that out, right? So as long as you have, as long as they're solvent and they're going to be around, right? And they have the right, you're not just a small fish in a big pond. That can be a real problem. If you're a 20,000 seat BPO, you're going to get a lot more attention than someone's got 100 reps, right? That's just how it's going to be. Yeah. But that part is critical for looking at what you're looking for. So it's also your tolerance for risk, right? I mean, if very few people get fired for selecting your upper right quadrant,
Yeah.
right? So it's easy to do that. However, in my experience, there's a lot of pain that comes from that sometimes. And there's a lot of pain from trying to be disruptive sometimes, right? So you have to be really aware. If you have it's like peripheral that's not mission critical for your business, then look wider. Look at a lot of different vendors. If you have something that's the key thing, your phone platform, right? Your CRM, right? Or whatever you're using, you better be really, really keen on understanding how that impacts if you go down the road of, let's say, a disruptive technology or whatnot, because that can actually come back to bite you relative to tools that are like vetted for 20, 30, 40 years or whatever. So yeah, so I think it's dependent upon the product. I think you have to be extremely objective. It's very easy to get subjective. I like this sales team. I don't like this sales team, whatever it is. That doesn't matter. What matters is, how does the product fit into your space? How does it fit into your budget? How does it fit into your specific use cases? And who's going to be able to solve that the best for you? And that will all tease out. And so at the end of the day, have a product or have a process in which you can just have an output that tells you what the best tool is for your business team. And that's what I've done over my career, is refine that process for myself. Yeah. So that the businesses that I work with, I can make sure that they're getting exactly what they need with the budget, the resources, and everything that comes along with it.
Makes sense, Sarah. Thank you so much for your time today. That's like almost an hour flew by. As I said, we can talk for much longer, but it's easy talking about these topics with you. You're always so insightful and have such deep experience in this space. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And thanks for, the podcast itself, because I think it educates a lot of folks, and you guys have a lot of great content out there. So
sounds good, Tyler. Thank you so much. And I will personally see you in June. Hopefully we could have a drink together or something and be an exciting panel in CCW together.
If anybody's at CCW, stop by. Love to talk about it. If anybody's listening wants to drop or watching, you want to drop a question to me, feel free on LinkedIn or whatever. That's fine. If we're connected already, then you can email. So
sounds
happy
good
to talk about it. It's a lot of good. We could talk for another half a day, like you said.
Sounds good, Tyler. Have a good one.